Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Auto Guide Show brought to you by eBay Motors. This week, we'll talk about taking two Toyotas up a mountain, the most extreme version of the Mustang yet, a whole bunch of new car debuts, including some at the Festival of Speed at Goodwood, and we'll even talk to Polestar's designer about its latest concept car. First, a word from our sponsors.
eBay Motors is here for the ride. Your elbow grease, fresh installs, and a whole lot of love transformed 100,000 miles and a body full of rust into a driveway entirely its own. Brake kits, LED headlights, whatever you need, eBay Motors has it. And with the eBay Guaranteed Fit, it's guaranteed to fit your ride the first time, every time, or your money back. Plus, at these prices, you're burning rubber, not cash. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only, exclusions apply.
All right, and welcome back. So, for people who are watching the podcast, you'll notice that we have a special guest returning with us as a co-host. Why don't you say hi, Jeff?
Hello. Am I still a special guest if I've been on multiple times, or am I just a guest now?
You're always a special guest here.
All right, thank you.
So everyone, yes, we are joined by Jeff Wilson, who is a regular contributor here at AutoGuide. And the reason he's joining us isn't just because Mike is off doing a road trip for very noble reasons, but because we're actually going to talk about something we did together recently, which is, well, Jeff, why don't you introduce it? This was your idea.
Yeah, I guess it was. Yeah. So much earlier this year, actually, just my brother and I, whom I work with, we were kind of brainstorming different adventurous ideas that we could do. And just on a whim, I thought I'd look up what the highest peak is that you can actually drive in Canada. And it turns out that it is Canoe Mountain in BC. And it's, now I've forgotten what the actual elevation is at the top, but there's once was an old fire road that was put in there, and it's since largely been reclaimed by nature. But we thought, hey, why not see if we can drive it?
Mm-hmm. And I think the elevation is 2,650 meters ish, around there, but I can't remember the conversion for feet right now. Sorry, U.S. listeners. But yeah, so you came up with this idea, you pitched it. Toyota was on board with sending two vehicles, and you very nicely invited me to join you on the tail end of the trip. And I say tail end because you two drove them across the country.
Yeah. My brother and I picked up the brand new Tacoma Trail Hunter and the Land Cruiser First Edition at the Toronto headquarters there for Toyota, and drove them 4,500 kilometers, again, whatever that translates into American. It's all the way across the country, or 2/3 of the way across the country, basically. And so we definitely logged some seat time. We towed a little trailer that we alternated between the two vehicles so that we could kind of get a sense of what it was like for hauling for these things, but also just so that we could kind of do the whole overland experience with them, the rooftop tent, and find the recreation sites, and do a little bit of off-roading, which kind of is where you came into the story too, right? As we hit the mountains there in Alberta, and you joined us there.
Yeah, I mean, I was really sad that I missed hundreds of miles of arrow straight roads day in, day out. Yeah, I flew into Calgary. You picked me up at the airport, and we camped right beside a river with a glorious mountain vista, and I slept in the back of the Land Cruiser. That was my intro to our adventure. For those listening,
Which I gotta say,
curious, Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I was shocked that you despite being offered a nice, comfortable tent and everything, you said, no, I'm doing this. I'm sleeping in the cruiser. So
Yeah, I had my mind set on it. I needed to do it, and it's not great. There's a lot of space. It's a very spacious room, and I barely needed the sleeping bag in terms of warmth, even though it got pretty cold at night. It was mostly that the seats in the Land Cruiser don't fold fully flat. It's just about an inch difference. And so that makes it really hard to try and spread out. You can sleep curled in a little ball, but yeah, that was not great. Needless to say, that was the only night that I slept in the Land Cruiser.
Right. So overlanders beware. If you're buying this thing to actually, use it to sleep in the back of it, you're going to have to build yourself a little bed structure in order for that to work.
Yes, yes. But I mean, we spent so much time in these vehicles over the next few days, and it was a learning experience, right? They're both similar. They have the same powertrain, but they're different in very important ways. And we realized one of the features in the Trail Hunter is easily the MVP of the entire trip.
That's right. It blows.
It blows. Yes,
that's right. The compressor, the built-in compressor, that thing was just such a time saver. We anybody that's done any sort of off-road knows that you air down your tires. It makes them just a little bit squishier so that they grip over things a little bit better. They're less susceptible to sharp rocks and stuff, which was certainly a situation that we were facing on the mountain there. And so when we got down, we could refill or basically re-air all 4 tires on the Tacoma, all 4 tires on the Land Cruiser in the time that it took our other buddy in his Jeep to do 2 tires with his aftermarket compressor. So it was just awesome having that there.
And it was also helpful because we didn't just go up the mountain once. I feel I don't want to spoil the story for people who are listening. And actually, on that note, I want to just point out that while you can read my story on AutoGuide, Jeff, where can people read your take on the story?
Yeah, so mine's going to be at autotrader.ca. So hopefully it'll be posted roughly the same time that yours is, so that we're not stealing each other's thunder too much.
Yeah, here's hoping. Yeah, so I guess do we think it's fine to share some of the details?
Yeah, I mean, for me, one of the big takeaways, notwithstanding what actually happened in the climb itself, but despite the similarities between these 2 trucks, originating on the same platform, having the same drivetrain, essentially, they were very, very different to drive off-road. On-road, they were fairly similar, but off-road, you could just pound the living heck out of that Trail Hunter, and it would take it. I mean, the old man emu suspension bits that they've put on that thing, it just feels more robust, more serious as a truck, and there's just that little bit more ground clearance, and I think all of that made it just it made it feel far more indestructible. That said, the Land Cruiser, I mean, it did everything that it needed to do to get up there. It's just that because it was just that slightly little bit shorter or less ground clearance on it, we had to pick our lines a little bit more carefully. It still went everywhere that the Taco did, but we had to be a little bit more careful not to bash the skid plates too much.
Although to that point about picking our lines, it was much easier to do in the Land Cruiser because the Trail Hunter only comes with the 6-foot bed, which gives it an incredibly long wheelbase, and so it's just not as agile as the little boxy guy. So that was an interesting contrast, right?
Well, and I mean, to that point, it's interesting because it's only Toyota Canada that's made that decision with the Trail Hunter. As I understand it, Toyota US is offering the Trail Hunter with both box options. So if you're really looking to do serious trail driving with this thing, where you actually need to kind of weave through obstacles, having the short box is definitely a smarter choice in that. I get it. As an overland vehicle, maybe you want and need that greater space in it to put your apparatus and tents and racks and whatever else you're doing with it. I understand, but it would be nice to have the option here, I think.
Yeah. And so, unsurprisingly, the much larger market gets more choices than our tiny little one.
Right, exactly. Exactly. But you're right. I mean, it made it very, cumbersome isn't maybe the right word, but I mean, that is a long, a big turning circle on that thing to get it around. And I mean, you even notice it in parking lots. And I suppose those that are accustomed to, driving half-ton trucks are probably looking at it and laughing and saying, well, I could wheel my Ram 1500 around these parking lots, no problem. What's wrong with you, kind of thing? And all right, maybe that's the case, but it's a very long wheelbase. They're really big, chunky tires, so you haven't got much turn on them, and so it means that you're doing an 82-point turn in order to get into any of these really tight spots. And oftentimes the Land Cruiser, you could just wheel it around like butter. It was easy.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it ended up giving me giving me more respect for the Land Cruiser, because we know it's not as hardcore off-roading as a Bronco or a Wrangler. Even in this first edition trim, which the eagle-eyed will note, it is not entirely stock. We had some upgraded tires on it for this adventure. It's still not going to challenge the outright capability of something like a Wrangler Rubicon, but it's also a lot easier to live with on the road. Is it still too pricey? Yeah, probably. Is it not entirely great on gas despite being a hybrid? Yeah, also that. But there is a certain secret sauce to the combination of attributes in this that made it really likable. It was a little sad to say bye after a few days and fly home, because I really liked it, and I get the appeal of the trail hunter. For me, I'm more of a TRD Pro person. I want to be able to go fast off road in a truck, but it is very capable.
Yeah, to your point about kind of just having grown some affection for these trucks after sort of logging some miles and some adventure with them. And just this afternoon, before joining you on this call, I was chatting with my brother, who in fact drove the Land Cruiser all the way back to Toronto and just got in late last night. So I said, oh, does it feel good to be back in your own vehicle and leave the old Land Cruiser behind? He said, no, I'm going to miss that thing. He really liked it. And I guess, having accumulated more seat time, more driving time in that thing than probably almost anyone else on the planet to this point. It's he's certainly got an affinity for it now, and he knows that thing inside and out.
Yeah. If we have any questions, we're just gonna ask him. Look at that. We went this entire way without even spoiling the story. So you know what? I'm just not going to. If you want to read the story, go read it at either of our stories. And yeah, we're looking forward to hearing what people think about it. I'm going to move us on to our next little story, covering, the biggest bits of news and reviews that we had this week at AutoGuide. So this is me. This is the 2024 Ford Mustang Dark Horse review. Jeff, I have lots of thoughts on this car.
It looks cool. I haven't driven it yet, so I'm all ears. Tell me what you got.
It does look cool, although I will say it looks cool specifically in this color, that really excellent blue ember metallic that goes from basically black to a dark purple to a blue to a little bit of gold. That looks great because it hides the really bad Robert Smith impression that the car has up front with the blackout panel under the headlights. It's Friday, I'm in love. It's the regular GT looks better in other colors. In this one, or I guess if you went with black, you wouldn't really notice the styling changes, but that is a tough thing. On the other hand, it looks mean. This one has the handling package, which gives you even wider wheels and tires, plus a deeper front spoiler that will catch on every single speed bump in the city. A bigger rear spoiler with a gurney flap, but those wider wheels hold or are wrapped in 305 tires up front and 315s on the back, and they're Trofeo Rs. Whoa. So they are super grippy. It tramlines all over the place. It requires constant attention and thus zero chill.
Zero chill, right? Okay.
Yeah, it sounds excellent because, of course, it does. Because the Coyote sounds great. It's not much more powerful than a GT. In fact, I'm wondering if it's any quicker in a straight line because it probably has some unsprung weight, but then more weight for other additions, and maybe it has more grip from those tires. But then after a certain speed, they're more resistance. It's a 14 horsepower
So
jump over the regular GT.
is this then kind of like what Chevy's done with, is it the 1LE package of the Camaro, where it's meant to make it a serious handling car, like a real track weapon, but not really any sort of power bump to it?
Yeah, it's with the Camaro dying this year, the Challenger
Mm.
dying last year. Yeah, it's not one of the power ones. I'm sure there will be a Shelby coming down the road with more power. This sort of takes the recipe for the Mach 1, which I never got to drive for the previous generation, and kind of, yeah, keeps upping that, where it's just a bit fitter Mustang. Um, Very great. When you're pushing it, kind of tough to live with the rest of the time. It has the MagnaRide suspension as standard, which is great, except
Yeah.
the settings are basically like stiff, stiffer, stiffest. The seats are very aggressive. There is that quiet mode, but I mean, you're not going to do that. You're going to have it on the
No.
loud mode all the time because, of course, it is catastrophically thirsty. Probably because you're having fun with it. And I should not ignore one of the most important upgrades versus the GT is that this has the Tremec, I can't remember the code, 3160 maybe. The Tremec 6-speed manual, which is different from the
Right.
Mustang GTs, and it is such a fun transmission. It's got that really mechanical, tight throw. The clutch is very well weighted. It just feels very deliberate and
Mhm.
joyous to use. And so I found myself downshifting just for the heck of it. Maybe that's why the fuel economy was so bad.
Yeah, it's been a couple of years now since I've driven a Mustang GT, and the last one that I drove, it was the previous generation, and it had, the basic performance package, the 6-speed manual,
Mhm.
and that was about it. The loud exhaust on it and whatever. And God, it was so good. And I remember thinking to myself, almost sacrilegiously here, that it made me think, why would someone need to spend so much more for an M4? Because it was so good, and I thought, as someone that's had more BMWs in my background than any other car, that just, it almost pained me to say and think that, but that was sort of the reality about how good the Mustang had become. This, I
Well,
imagine, is just so much better.
it's funny you mentioned that yardstick, the BMW, because this comes to nearly the price of an M4. And so it's a question of taste. The interior is
Mhm.
still a Mustang. It's better for
Mhm.
24, but it's still a lot of plastic and not entirely convincing carbon fiber. Um,
Right.
and yeah, it's $75,000 US. It's $91,000 Canadian. Ah, It's Would I get it? No, I feel like I'd probably, if I was in the market for something like this, I probably just stick with a well-spec'd GT because it's easier to live with, and I get most of
Mhm.
this experience.
Yeah.
I can see the argument though. If someone wants a Mustang because they want a Mustang, which is the case for a lot of people, but they want one that is more capable than anything else, this will keep that M4 honest. But you're paying a lot to do it. So
So is it ready for track days right out of the box then?
ready for track days. I was very lucky to actually drive it at Road America the week after because our
Mm.
press car was not allowed to go on tracks, but I happened to be at an event, so I did one lap in a red one, it's the same spec, and yeah, it is made for track duty. It's one of those cars that I'm actually fine with having a manual. It's about the limit of how quick of a car I'd want with a manual because faster you feel like you're stumbling trying to set
Mm.
fast lap times in my mind.
Mhm,
But
mhm, mhm.
yeah, it's very capable and fun on a track. So yeah, that's my long-winded explanation of it is a very divisive car. I wouldn't want to live with it versus a GT, but if you are regularly planning on tracking, your Mustang? Oh yeah, go for it. But get this color. Yeah, that's it. I guess we should keep moving on.
All right, what you got?
But yeah, we have this, which is Mazda surprised us. At least I didn't see this coming, that the CX-50
No.
now has a hybrid for 2025. Even more surprising, it's not that plug-in that you loved so much when you when you drove the CX-90 recently. It's a Toyota hybrid powertrain.
Yeah. So is this the same system that's basically in what, a RAV4?
Yes. Yeah, it's that, which is interesting, right? Because, I mean, Mazda's engines are not the most fuel efficient, so this is a great solution to that. But it's the CX-50, which is meant to be more of an off-roady vehicle versus a CX-5. And Toyota's all-wheel drive hybrid system is electronic all-wheel drive. There is no physical connection to the rear axle, so this isn't going to be as capable off-road as a regular CX-50. And also, that engine is rough. That it's in the RAV4. It is a
Yeah.
Roni engine.
So it's the same. It's the same engine that Toyota uses as well as their battery and electric motor system, or is the Mazda engine in this?
Ooh, I should. You know what? That's a good question.
Sorry to trip you up on
I
that one.
think no, that's probably, you know what? That would make a lot more sense that Mazda would just keep their setup. So you know what? Never mind. Forget what I said earlier. Because the 2.5 in the Mazda is actually, it's a pretty solid engine in terms of refinement for a bigger naturally aspirated four-cylinder.
Right.
Yeah, never mind. Okay, well, I mean, I'm curious about this, and I know I just
Yeah.
said, oh, it's not going to be as off-roady, but do you think most people buy a CX-50 to off-road?
No, I think honestly, those that are looking for a crossover that are going for the adventure stuff are probably sticking with an Outback anyway, and I think it's just that little bit more capable. But it's not to say that the CX-50 is incapable. I think it does a great job. I've actually taken it off road before, and it was surprisingly good. Will the typical buyer, especially for the hybrid, really care? Probably not, right?
No, no. Yeah. All right, and our last bit of news for the week, because we gotta get moving through this, is that in case people who are watching are wondering why I am in a different location, I am in a hotel outside of Heathrow because I have spent the week at the, well, I didn't spend the week at the Goodwood Festival of Speed, but I spent today, and it was a long, fun day. And I'm here with Polestar, who debuted the concept BST, because BST is short for Beast, which is the term that the company's CEO gave to their first tinkered high performance version of a vehicle, and it's stuck. And this is a high performance concept of the upcoming Polestar 6, which is a very pretty EV roadster. And so this has a few extra toys. It's slightly wider, it's very subtly wider. More extreme aero, a ridiculous rear spoiler, and I say ridiculous in a positive way. Yeah, it looks extreme, and the performance figures that Polestar is targeting for the regular 6, which is over 800 horsepower, over 300 miles of range, 0 to 60 around 3 seconds even. This is more, and we don't have enough two-door EVs or open roof EVs, so
Yeah.
yes.
It's neat to see the technology, the EV movement sort of now infiltrating other segments, isn't it? Like to see it starting to end up in the sportier cars, and that's been happening, and then obviously into pickup trucks, that's been happening, and you know to see it into these like more sports coupes and things like that, more kind of the personal luxury car, so to speak, I think is brilliant. I think it's awesome. And
Yeah.
I know there's just, massive waves of people out there that are still very, very, very anti-EV. I think many of whom have probably never driven an EV. And it's not to say that they work for everybody, but I think for those that they do work for, it's exciting. And to see stuff like this is awesome. It looks sexy as hell, and I don't know. I hope to get some seat time in something like that, in the not too distant future. That's for sure.
Yeah, same. And it had a good amount of attention at what was a very crowded Goodwood. And all I will say before wrapping this one up is that while I was here, I did get a ride along in a prototype of the Polestar 5. I will have more on that on a future episode, but yeah, it's what companies are capable of doing now with EVs and I guess sports sedan. So the same basic platform but larger. It really has me thinking positively about this model in particular, using a cut down version of the same platform. So I'm gonna cut us there, and we're gonna come back with a fun new question of the week with Jeff and I. But before that, a quick word from our sponsors.
eBay Motors is here for the ride. With the parts you need at the prices you want, and with the eBay Guaranteed Fit, they're guaranteed to fit your ride the first time, every time, or your money back. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only, exclusions apply.
All right, and welcome back. So for this week's question of the week, we are sticking with, well, it's a theme that I definitely just came up with because I was at Goodwood. I saw this very pretty, very cool Alpine A110. And so the question that I posed to everyone this week is, what cars that released in the last decade will be future classics? Obviously, my first pick is this, which is a little unfair because it's not sold in our markets, but I think it's one of those ones that, like the GTR or the 959 or any number of forbidden fruits over the years, it's going to be one of those ones that we really try hard to get once we can. Lucky for us in Canada, that's only 15 years after they went into production, not 25 like the US. So that's my first pick. Go nuts, Jeff.
That's a fair assessment. I'm going to then go with a direct competitor for that, and with the recent rumor mill fired up there, or maybe it's now confirmed that the next 718 or the Porsche 718s moving forward will no longer have an ICE drivetrain in them. I think the 718 Cayman and Boxster with the 4-liter in it, they've got to become collectible of some sort. Now I realize they're going to be in a little bit bigger volume than some of the other cars we might mention here, but that's going to be my first pick.
I can't argue that one. I drove a Boxster 4.0 GTS a few months back, and it is just as good as I remember. I will argue, somewhat controversially maybe, that it is a better driving car than a 911. It's smaller. It keeps all of its weight closer in the wheelbase.
Yeah.
It sounds better because it's a 4-liter. It just has too long a gearing. That's the only problem that car has. It's really practical because it has 2 trunks. I totally agree. That's a great pick.
All right, what else you got?
What else do I have that came out in the last 10 years? I think the Civic Type R. The current one. Maybe the previous one, because that was such a big deal because it finally came to North America officially. But I think this one that we currently enjoy, because it tweaks it and makes it even better. And it's very likely the last one that won't have some level of electrification. And that's not to say it maybe it's starting to come off like we're against electrification. We're not in certain situations. It's just that, I mean, it's Honda making a high power front drive manual transmission hot hatch. Like, few companies know their niche better than Honda in that particular case, and it's fantastic. Even if I will argue that the Integra Type S is actually the better daily, the Civic Type R is the collectible.
Yeah, okay. I'm not going to argue that one either. I think that's probably a pretty safe assessment. And I think we're at that stage now because we're on the cusp of this, well, probably not on the cusp. We're right in the middle of this quantum shift of what the whole auto industry is doing, right? Like where there's before electrification and there's after, and I think we're thrust so rapidly now into the after that it's sort of everything that was really good of the last of the ICE machines, I think has some collectible potential to it. But to take it even a step further then would be my next suggestion, because this one's also, it not only is it not electrified, but it's also not turbocharged or supercharged or anything else. It just makes do with a really good naturally aspirated V8, and that's the Lexus LC500. It looked like a show car when it was a show car, and it still looks like a show car that just happens to be parked in people's garages now, you know?
Yes, while the rest of us just hope that they keep depreciating.
Right.
No, that's a fair one. That remains one of my favorite modern cars. And yeah, people are going to hoard those, aren't they? Especially ones that have the upgraded infotainment for 24.
That's right. Yeah.
It's basically a perfect car now.
Pretty much.
Yeah, geez, I have nothing to add for that one. I could maybe argue no. In an alternate universe where the F version of that actually did come out, I wonder if that actually would have made it less desirable, because right now it's such a good Grand Tour, and I'm not sure if the LC needs a harder edge.
No, I agree. I think if Lexus wanted that really ripping, snorting car, they could have or should have done it with something altogether different. You know, that it would ruin the perfection that is the LC for sure.
Yes. So in summary, everyone else, please buy those cars, and let us buy them right at the lowest depreciation point. Please and thank you.
That's right. Just lease them so that they get flipped over into the next market. Yeah, that's what we want.
Yes. All right. Well, Jeff, I think we should maybe move on to the next segment, because I'm sure we could talk about more of this for a while. But I'm going to quickly ask the listeners if you have other suggestions for what you believe would be a future classic. Send them along our way and let us know, because I'd love to talk about it on a future episode. So on that note, I am going to take a little break here. We're going to take a little break. And when we come back, we will be talking with a designer from Polestar on site here at Goodwood. And yeah, I think you'll find that really interesting. But again, before that, this has been the Auto Guide Show, brought to you by eBay Motors. And here's a word from our sponsor.
eBay Motors is here for the ride. Okay, everyone, let's take a minute and talk about the one that got away. The vehicle you once owned and for whatever reason had to get rid of, and to this day fully regret ever doing so. For me, it's my Subaru SVX. It was a 1997 model, which was one of the last years it was ever sold here. It was black on the outside and it had the beige leather and suede interior. It was in amazing condition for its age because it was just a one-owner vehicle. The interior was near flawless. The paint was pretty good considering it was about a 20-year-old car when I got it. I just loved everything about it. I loved the quirkiness because I love oddball cars. I love the window within the window, the power button on the gear shifter, the way the dash was laid out and you could hide the radio behind the fake wood panel. The flat six was just so smooth and it was all-wheel drive, and although it wasn't overly quick, it still had enough power. The problem was, within a year of buying that car, I ended up selling it because I got a great deal on another vehicle, and to this day I regret doing so. Part of the reason I sold it was, although it was in great shape, it wasn't perfect and there were things that needed to be fixed, like the air conditioner, reservoir, some bearings and other bits. And back then there was no eBay guaranteed fit program, so finding parts for such a rare 20-year-old car was not easy. Luckily, I sold it to someone who not only cared for it, but took the time to fix it up, and every once in a while I do get to still see it, and I still regret ever getting rid of it. I am constantly online looking for a new SVX because now I have a system that I can find parts for it, but I haven't come across one that's both in the right condition and the right price range. With over 122 million parts, you can make sure your number one ride or die stays running smoothly. Brake kits, LED headlights, roof racks, bumpers, whatever your baby needs, eBay Motors has it. And with the eBay Guaranteed Fit, it's guaranteed to fit your ride first time, every time, or your money back. Plus, at these prices, you're burning rubber and not cash. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only, exclusions apply.
Hello, everyone. We're going to do a bit of a special interview for this week's podcast because I am live on site at the Goodwood Festival of Speed with Polestar's designer. So I'm just going to ask him to introduce himself.
Yeah, hi. Maxime Selaye. I'm the lead designer, exterior designer of the Polestar BST Concept that we will present today. So.
Well, Maxime, can you walk us through this BST concept?
Yes, sure. So, like I said, it's quite unusual, but I usually like to start with the rear of the car. Mm-hmm. So why that? Because we have been working a lot around the proportion of the car, the volume, in comparison to the concept roadster that was shown 2 years ago now. So what we have done is pushing this beautiful line that you see on the side, mm-hmm. on the shoulder, and this one has been moved around approximately 50 mil inside.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
And the wheel has been moved 70 mil out, so to create this beautiful volume that you can see. So that's the main difference when it comes to proportion between the Roadster and the Concept BST.
So now that we're entering sort of a new era with Polestar, how important has it been to kind of break new ground in terms of design and give it a very unique, identifiable design language? Can you walk us through the steps of getting there?
Yeah, I mean, of course, the first, the Polestar 1 was the kind of the halo car of Polestar to introduce the brand. The two followed closely, but now today it's great to be on the stand and see the 2, the 3, the 4, and we have also a prototype, 6 prototype running up on the hill. So it's quite amazing to see in just a few years that now we have the car out and running, and so it's a great feeling for us.
One thing I wanted to ask you, because we've been all over with Polestar the last few days, we've been talking to the engineering side as well, and we know that it usually is a push-pull kind of situation with design versus engineering. So how has this new platform really helped you from a design perspective?
Yeah, I mean, the great thing about this platform is the flexibility of it. So it's sharing the same platform as the Polestar 5. But what we did for this car is we removed the rear foot garage to have a shorter wheelbase and create this stunning car with great proportion. So it's, as a designer, what you need to start is great proportion. So there it is.
Excellent proportions. Yeah. I feel bad for whoever's listening to the podcast that they don't get to see this, but hopefully they're watching the video. Yeah. Can you walk us, since we're still at the rear of the car, can you walk us through this wing? Because it is, like you said, very unusual. And so can you talk to us about maybe the active elements and just why you did this with this sort of car?
So what we have done is during the process of designing this concept car, we have been working closely with our UK engineer to find the right, to get the credibility of the car. So it's not just a pure design exercise. We always try, when we do a concept car, to do something that is credible and could be feasible later on. So the wing is a good example, because when you see the different section between the what we call the Y0, the center of the car, you see that there is a small step and a different angle between this lower wing profile. And this is mainly due because the airflow is coming from the roof and on the side, so they need a different approach angle. So everything that you see is something that has been thought through and worked closely with the UK team.
It has a purpose each and every step of the way.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Excellent.
And it's the same with the diffuser. We have been working. You can see the angle, the approach, and some very small detail like the extra flick here. That is an excellent way for the aero. So every little detail. I mean, in Polestar we love details. We take a nice example that you were talking about is our logo. Mm-hmm. Now it's sitting proudly on this rear shield. So it's a exploration that using the concept car also to explore. Mm-hmm. So
it's such a unique approach to a badge because it's not. Polestar has made a very consistent approach to never have chrome badging, and now to have this clear base to lift the logo out from the.
So it's it's still matte body painted, like we have on all cars, but we added a small tweak to it and a nice detail, I think. And especially when you walk around, you see that the shape is evolving. It's a nice way that, but once you can see it from one angle, and when you start to move around, you will see different angles, different shapes, and that's what we have done also with the BST graphic on the side.
It's true, yeah. As we make our way around.
Exactly, and the more you move to the side, the more the graphic will be perfectly straight. So it's almost like an artwork. It's in some view it's abstract, and in very defined view it's perfect aligned.
And that's we were told at Apollo yesterday that Polestar focuses on design at every level, even your camo. The camo wraps are in-house design. They're not brought in from anywhere else.
Exactly. There is and like I said, strong attention to details, and everything has to be designed. Like our stand, like of course the car, and the graphics are very important because that's something that we always play with. We play with the contrast between the strong graphics and the lovely section and volume that we are creating. So it's always this combination between sharp, almost dogmatic graphics, and then lovely emotional section of the volume.
Yeah, right here in profile is a pretty emotional view.
Yeah.
So one final question I need to ask before we go and enjoy the rest of Goodwood. We're here, there's a lot of classic cars, there's a lot of ICE cars. We're now seeing this new era and more acceptance with EVs as sports cars. What do you see as an inherent benefit of being on an EV platform from a sports car perspective, even from just pure design?
I mean, from a design point of view, the main change is we have more freedom when it comes to the front volume, for example. We can play a lot with the attention used to be in the center of the hood because we have space for an engine, of course. Now that we remove the engine, we can push back the attention to the wheels. That's where the power is. So especially when you see the front here, you have this beautiful offset between the power sits here, not in the center of the car anymore. So that's a big difference. And of course, a longer wheelbase gives the car a nice presence on the road, a good stance. The car sits perfectly on the road.
Yeah, this stance is pretty incredible. Maximilian, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with us about this. And I can't wait to see this or something like this on the road.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks.
Hey, we're back with Call on Mode once again to talk F1. This week, again, we're going to change it up a bit, not do the usual news and rumors. We have a different topic, something that has kind of been popping its head up every once in a while.
Yes, the Formula One movie. It's not made by Formula One per se, but this is, if you've seen it, really sort of hit headlines almost maybe a full year ago now when they were filming for this movie at the British Grand Prix. And they had, because people started noticing there are these weird black and gold livery cars out of the track, and what's going on. So so
it's rich energy. I got it. It's a documentary on that.
Wouldn't that be hilarious? I bet you there's some stories there. We'll see. So it's I was thinking of like even the John Player's special ones, but I guess that was yeah. So it's a good look, right? The funny thing is actually that there are these cars with actual like sponsors on them, right? And yet those brands aren't actually sponsoring real Formula One teams. So it's kind of ironic, right? Like there are other, because it's supposed to look like a truly unique, genuine team. So
okay, so like on their car, not the competitors' cars. Like, if they're racing real competitor cars or not. Like,
well, so the idea of the story here is it's this fictional 11th extra team racing in Formula One, and I get the feeling that, and I don't know how it's all going to play out, that it may actually involve all the other teams and characters that are going to use shots of real like competition, and so it's going to be as though this other team was competing in this year, right? So, which is pretty wild and ambitious. And so that's why they've done all the shooting at tracks. So they're at the British Grand Prix, they've been at other tracks. I guess some of it was the writer's strike, whatever, really sort of delayed some of this production. And apparently I think they were actually shooting when they weren't supposed to be. And then they basically, so that they didn't like break union rules, they actually had to like not use any of that footage, which is kind of messy. But I guess if I'm looking at my notes here, I think they're actually supposed to do shooting at the Abu Dhabi race at the end of the year in December. So you can imagine that maybe in this movie, that's when the guy wins the big prize and everybody's
or maybe not the big prize, but whatever. Like he finally does well. There was one not too long ago where people were posting on social media pictures of the car crashed because like it didn't crash, but that was part of the story, and everyone's like, "Oh, the Brad Pitt's car crashed." The thing that's really strange is they haven't given a title and they haven't really disclosed what it's about, yet they're telling us release dates and film dates. So it makes me wonder, are they doing something that's very close to real life and that's why they don't want to name it because they don't want people expecting something? Like, is this sort of like maybe like the Braun GP team kind of angle, or is it like, some other startup from back in the day that totally failed and it's just like a what if type thing?
Yeah, so the plot that I've been able to surmise, because it's funny, even if you look at all the official channels, they don't say a lot. But I actually saw there was a great interview that Martin Brundle did with Brad Pitt, and got a little bit more info out of him than when he did it. So they've said all along that it's about this this up and coming racer, right? Who's played by, and if I can find his name now, it's Damson Idris, who I wasn't familiar with before this, but he's sort of the up and comer in the sport. He's on this terrible team that's the 11th fictional team. And I guess the team brings back Brad Pitt as this sort of, I don't know, washed up or retired former Formula One driver who, it's funny because Brad Pitt is now 60. So if we make fun of Fernando Alonso at 43. So Brad Pitt's 60 coming back and into this car, which is, the team is called, it's either Apex GP or APX GP. Apparently the team manager is Javier Bardem from No Country for Old Men. So I think that's interesting. So he's going to play like the team manager, and he's a friend of Brad Pitt's character. And I guess so he basically asked Brad to come back and basically show the young guy the ropes and teach him some things. So I kind of see this as, and maybe this is just all in my mind, that like I really saw when the Mercedes team came about, that when the Mercedes team came about or came back, Schumacher came there and got it all started, right, and really got it going. And his time there was unglamorous, right, and it wasn't fancy, and there was no great victories and no great return to glory for Schumacher, but he helped get them on the right road. And who do they employ but Lewis Hamilton, and they go on to just like kill it and become a great team, right? So I feel like there's a little bit of connection there, and of course Lewis Hamilton is credited as a producer on this movie as well. So I think that's another interesting element. So
maybe an unofficial, based on a true story type thing.
Yeah, like there could be elements, right? Like it's not an allegory per se, but it's just like it takes some weaves in little bits here and there. So I'd say I'm curious. Like I watched that interview with Brad Pitt, and I've been pretty skeptical about this movie the whole time, thinking like, oh boy, this is going to be I mean, Hollywood turns out more duds, I think, than successes, right? So I was worried and worried from a true fan perspective that they're just going to make something that's, maybe would be a box office hit, but just kind of makes you groan, right? It's like when you watch the first Fast and the Furious movie and they're talking about parts that don't exist and stuff. It's like, oh, like one of those, right? Yeah. So, but I didn't know Brad Pitt actually, he's raced motorcycles apparently, maybe not like in a series, but like on tracks, etc. So he has some idea, but he was very good saying he would like getting one of these cars. The car they use is actually apparently a Formula 2 car that's been modified to look like an F1 car, because basically a regular human being just couldn't drive an actual Formula 1 car. So he's been very modest about how, saying it was hard, and it was a blow to the ego, and that they've tried really hard to make this the best thing possible and employed all the right people. And so I'm after that, I feel a lot better that they may actually, do this right. So
yeah, how you said being a movie and you're like, that's also like the Gran Turismo movie. Knowing the real story, I was just like, it was cool because it kind of was based on what that guy did, but it was all out of order. My favorite was when the teams all switched classes for the one final race. It's like, we're now all in prototypes.
Yeah.
But it's funny though. It seems to be like not a tradition. It's probably just an easy way to get good footage. But like Days of Thunder, that IndyCar one with Sylvester Stallone, they always use real footage mixed in with theirs, because you can't get 43 cars to drive around every track all the time or whatever you need. So
no, you can't.
It's a little more authentic.
I know. I always think back to like Top Gun as the original, like as the epitome of like they got the U.S. Navy to like participate in a movie, right? And really and be like, we're going to do this. We're not going to like just buy some crappy planes and make them look like fighter jets. We're going to like get real footage of, we'll fake a lot of it, but we'll get amazing shots, right? So and Jerry Bruckheimer is involved in this as well, and he's known for over the top wild stuff. So Bruckheimer usually makes something that's pretty fun to watch. So
this is completely off topic, but I bet you 2024 Tom Cruise would, if he was making the original Top Gun, he'd insist, no, I'm going to fly the plane. You're going to teach me how to fly the plane. I don't want someone flying it for me. It's going to be me.
He would. Which is, if we want to go even further off like kilter here, I want to see a Formula 1 driver drive a fighter jet. I feel like it's the closest thing, and they would be like somewhat able, right? Like if we could, I don't know. I feel like there's a story no one's done yet. Like Red Bull has, pooped tons of movie money and loves doing these ridiculous storylines. Like, can we get Max Verstappen flying a Dutch fighter jet for just a few minutes? Like, this that would be very cool to see. And maybe we get a fighter jet to drive an F1 car while we're at it.
If you're just basing it purely on G-force, maybe we could send an F1 driver to space, because the astronauts need to take a lot of G's too. So get a Max Verstappen in the International Space Station for a week or something.
Perfect. Yeah, I think his competition would like that.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think that's all we have on the movie. I'm looking forward to it. Maybe the whole sponsors thing is they're just gaslighting, and in post with CGI, it's going to turn into Andretti Racing, and it's really just a marketing ploy by them to make F1 have to take them in because the fans are all waiting to see it. So
it could. So there's no title, like you said. The date for the launch is apparently June 25th of next year, and then oddly, it will debut 2 days later on the 27th in North America. So mark your calendars, and we'll see if it's worth it. We'll see what the Rotten Tomatoes score is after the first weekend.
So that would be this weekend. So I guess like Silverstone.
I suspect there's a real correlation there.
Because they filmed a lot there, right? So
yeah.
And Hamilton's a producer. All right, well, thanks a lot for joining us. We will be back next week, and we will cover some of the news. We're going to be getting close to summer break, so some of the silly stuff might start happening, but it doesn't look like it's going to happen this year. Everyone's like already kind of settled for the most part. There's a couple seats, but
We'll find out.
all right. Well, thanks for joining us, and we'll talk to you later.
Thanks, Mike.
All right, and welcome back. That was a very interesting talk, and we always appreciate getting the time to do something like that. So we're going to wrap things up here. So we're going to do what we always do and talk about what's next. Although I will say, on our commercial break just now, Jeff pointed out to me that he had even more future classic suggestions. So I'm very fascinated. Jeff, can you just please throw out one other one? Because I just want to know now.
Okay, and I'll give you two, and I'll just whip my
Okay.
quick. So one is BMW's E92 M3, because again, it was naturally aspirated. The only time they did a naturally aspirated V8 in the M3, and I think that's destined for classic hood. And the other is the Audi TT RS, because it was such an awesome car, but it was so limited numbers. Okay, that's it. I'm done.
That's great. Both of them are like almost supercar levels of performance. Yeah. Okay. Excellent. So what's next is, well, actually, it's really funny that we timed this the way we did. Jeff and I are doing this episode. We climbed a mountain together, and then actually we're going to be doing a quartet comparison next week with maybe potential future classics. Maybe we're doing affordable, fun cars. It is the Toyota GR86, the Subaru BRZ TS, the revised Mazda MX-5 Miata, because it gets the subtlest of styling tweaks, and then some very necessary infotainment upgrades. And then actually the 2025 Mini Cooper S, which is going to be fascinating because that one just kind of came out of nowhere and surprised us in terms of being available. It's going to be a bit of a shock because for those who aren't aware, this new generation of Mini, because pretty much every Mini is new for 25, it is no longer available with a manual transmission.
Yeah. So the only one that's got quasi-practical proportions to its cabin, the only one that's front-wheel drive, and the only one with an automatic. This is the odds are stacked against it, but we've always loved driving the Mini, right? So how could it not be there?
Yeah, and the new one has that go-kart driving mode that when you pick it, it says "woohoo!" And how am I?
What's more fun than that?
Yeah, and I think only Mini can really get away with being that cheeky, and
Totally.
it has pretty easily. I mean, I guess it depends on the colors, but even then, pretty easily the best interior out of them. So yeah, that's why we said affordable fun cars, because it's not necessarily sports cars, but these are cars that you'd buy if you want to have some fun while driving, and that could mean slightly different things depending on the car. So we're very much looking forward to driving that. Jeff, what have you been, well, I shouldn't say driving this week, should I?
No, this week I've been on the BMW R12 9T. So that is the new generation of their kind of retro classic, they call them roadster motorcycles. And it is finished in a spectacular green color. In fact, it's the same color that they use on the 4 Series. It's like this really dark emerald green color. It looks gorgeous on this bike. And it's got the old boxer pistons sticking out either side in the classic BMW way. And so when you blip the throttle a little bit, it shakes itself one side to the other, and it's good fun. So I'm having loads of fun this week. I'm going to be having loads of fun again next week. This is summer living. I love it. This is good.
Right? This is what we do up in Canada. We get all the fun cars jam-packed into about 2 months because that's how long our nice weather lasts.
Exactly.
I was gonna say I've also been in a BMW this week, but let's be honest, I haven't spent much time there because I've been over on this side of the Atlantic. But I do have a BMW M8 Coupe that I'm going to be getting into once I get home tomorrow. I will be spending the weekend driving it. So for listeners, that'll be just before this episode goes live. Yeah, I'm going to be packing a whole week's worth of driving into the weekend. And so I'm very curious because I don't think I've driven the coupe version of the 8 Series. I've only driven the Grand Coupe. So it's such a strange segment to me. And I wonder how this stacks up in 2024. Yeah, that's it. It seems like it should be a good.
It's really quick. As a spoiler,
No way.
It's really quick.
Oh, are you saying a 617 horsepower vehicle with all-wheel drive is interesting? Yeah, so I'm very much looking forward to that. Next week is going to be a blast. Yeah, it's been fun. And it's been fun having you on the show again, Jeff. It's always great having you here. And
thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming on the show. And this has been another successful episode of the Auto Guide Show, brought to you by eBay Motors. And to everyone listening, have a great week, and we'll see you soon.
eBay Motors is here for the ride. Your elbow grease, fresh installs, and a whole lot of love transformed 100,000 miles and a body full of rust into a driveway entirely its own. Brake kits, LED headlights, whatever you need, eBay Motors has it. And with the eBay Guaranteed Fit, it's guaranteed to fit your ride the first time, every time, or your money back. Plus, at these prices, you're burning rubber, not cash. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only, exclusions apply.